Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to radio.com on this Football Friday. In essence, the last Football Friday of the year because the Super Bowl doesn't count. It's an event. There's no game next week, and the Super Bowl is not like anything else. So this is really the last Football Friday of the year, and it will lead to a doubleheader on Sunday as we have the AFC and NFC title games, and we have four teams. Interesting storylines, good solid teams, not great teams, but good solid teams that have had strong seasons. One that has gotten hot late, and that would be Tennessee. But interesting matchups. Both teams are 7.5 point underdogs. The lines have not moved all week. They have the Green Bay game went to 7.5, and when it did, it stayed there. The Kansas City game has been there all the way. So both Kansas City and San Francisco are 7.5 point favorites. The teams each met in the regular season. Tennessee beat Kansas City. And remember, Kansas City had Mahomes hurt. They had some guys out of the lineup. Tennessee beat them. And Henry had a big game, 188 yards rushing. And this year in games when Kansas City allows more than 110 yards rushing, that means teams are moving the ball on the ground. They're 4-4. When they don't have teams run the ball on them at all, that means that teams are trying to match them in the air or are behind big, and in those games they're undefeated. But this is a better Kansas City team. It's been better against the run, even though I don't know if it's going to have Chris Jones. I would doubt it. The way it looks now, probably not for the game. And even if he does, he probably won't be very strong, anywhere near full strength. But this is a better Kansas City defense than the one they played earlier in the season. And then San Francisco is clearly back at full strength and showed that against Minnesota with a dominant defensive performance. And they, remember, gave the Packers, who were, for a very efficient season that the Packers have had, they've had a couple of really head-scratching games. And one of them was the San Francisco game because they got destroyed by the Niners. They got beat 37-8 in week number 12. And, it was one of Rodgers' worst game. Everyone 20 or 33 for 102 yards. They got sacked 5 times. They were overmatched in this game, San Francisco's defense. And San Francisco is healthier now on defense than they were in that game. San Francisco's been a different defense when they've had everybody healthy, including having Quan Alexander healthy, and they do now. And when they've done that, they've been a dominant defense, and they are a dominant defensive front, and that's where that game will lie. There's two things. You look at this game that just jumps right out at you. Of course, it's Kansas City's ability to slow down Henry, who obviously has been not dominant. He's been off the charts brilliant in the first 2 playoff games. He has been record-breaking in the first 2 playoff games. He has dominated the games in every way, physically, mentally, emotionally. He has dominated the games with his presence. There's no question about it. And he will try to do the same thing again this week because without him doing that, this will be a very tall order for Tennessee. Tennessee's going to have trouble slowing down Kansas City anyway. Mahomes passed for 446 yards. Passed for 446 yards the first time they met. So they're going to move the ball. We know that. They're going to move the ball against anybody. They were unstoppable after the first quarter, although Bill O'Brien helped them with some ridiculous strategy to let them back in the game. After playing about the worst first quarter a playoff team could ever play, they were dominant offensively. After that, putting up 50 points in the last 3 quarters after getting behind 24-0 in the first quarter at Arrowhead. They're back at Arrowhead now, and they obviously have to slow down the big back, who already hit them for 188 yards the first time they played this year. On the other game, it's about the pass rush. Can Green Bay do anything to negate a pass rush that is absolutely dominant when it's at full strength, and it will be at full strength this week when Bosa and Ford are in the lineup on pure passing downs? They get to the quarterback 18% of the time. The league average is 6. They get to the quarterback 18% of the time. That is an outrageous number. So that is going to be a key, and expect Green Bay to have really spent a lot of time examining everything they did wrong. And they have a pilot who can do anything in Rodgers. And I think what you're going to see them is A, they're going to try and run the ball more, and they're improved in that area. B, I expect them to go to a lot of quick stuff. I think you're going to see him get the ball out very, very quickly. I expect them to try and spread things out, and really for him to go to a lot of uh, quick slides and quick moves, but also just three step drop and the ball's gone on the third step. I expect to see a lot of that stuff out of him because I can't see them believing that they can stop this pass rush. If you're going to ask him to take deep drops, they're going to have a hard time with their offensive line matching up against what is the best pure pass rush group in the NFL. I mean, there's no question about that. If San Francisco has an issue, it's they're inexperienced, and Garoppolo looked very uneven in his first playoff game. Actually, in that game, the coaching staff took the ball out of his hands. Now, they were running the ball incredibly well, and their defense was completely dominating the game. So they did have a big margin of error. They did not need him to throw the ball, but he made some big mistakes. He threw a bad interception, and then he opened the second half by putting a ball up that should have been intercepted again. So you could see that they were a little on little less than confident with Garoppolo's performance, but his performance this year has been terrific. And the guy has been nothing but a winner since the day he's taken over as a starting quarterback in San Francisco. He's been nothing but a winner, and he is the heart and soul of that team. But he has, very little experience, and he's in the postseason for the first time, and he did make some mistakes in judgment and put the ball into scary places in that game against Minnesota. So we'll see how that plays out. Now, the factors that you think about, is it a big factor they played each other? Not really. I don't think I almost dismiss that as much as anything else. I think that it won't play into what happens in this game. It doesn't help or hurt Kansas City's ability to stop the run. It doesn't help or hurt Green Bay's ability to protect the quarterback because we know how strong these teams are in those areas. We know how strong Tennessee is running the ball. We know how strong Green Bay is getting to the quarterback. So they know whether they had played them this year or not, they were going to have to deal with those factors in this game. Whether, it's not going to be a factor in San Francisco, which will be game two, which will start obviously in the 6 o'clock hour here in New York, 3 o'clock hour in San Francisco. They're looking at 60 degrees, light winds, no precipitation, so perfect, absolutely perfect football weather in Santa Clara for the game. And in Kansas City, looks like no precipitation, 10-mile-an-hour winds, and game time temperature of about 22 degrees. Now, they said during the game the winds could pick up to 10 to 15 miles an hour, which could be a little bit of a factor. The temperature for the game is going to be 24 degrees, so it's going to be chilly. It's not going to be outrageous. It's not going to be anything anybody can't deal with. Temperature's going to be going down during the game, but nothing really that's going to be earth-shattering. It's not going to be any inclement weather. There's not going to be any snow. There's not going to be any heavy winds. There's not going to be anything that is going to impact that game in any dramatic way, either way there. So the weather won't play a factor. Injuries, there aren't that many that you have to deal with. San Francisco's healthier than they've been. Kittle's been on a little bit of a gimpy ankle, but he's going to play. Chris Jones is the biggest issue. Green Bay should be healthier on their offensive line. The key guy of all four teams that has a major injury is Chris Jones. He's got the calf. We just don't know if it's day to day with him. You almost get the idea that they're going to wait until the Super Bowl, but we don't know that for sure. It's a game time decision, but I just don't think he's going to be a major factor in the game. He is a very important player for them. He's key to them getting what they want to get done along that defensive front, but I just don't think he's going to be a big factor in this game. I think it's going to take him a couple more weeks, and maybe he'd be healthy by Super Bowl. Now, if you're wondering, Kansas City is the favorite of the four teams to win it all. They would be favored over either of the NFC teams. They would be a 1 point favorite over San Francisco. They would be a much bigger favorite over the Packers, about 4.5, 4.5, 5, but probably 4.5 points favorite over Green Bay, and they'd be a 1 point favorite over the Niners if that were the Super Bowl matchup. So Kansas City will be favored against either of the teams. Tennessee would be an underdog, but a slight underdog in the games. Now, Tennessee has been really remarkable with what they've done as an underdog, and they have the look of that team that believes now, that believes in the coach, that almost has the kind of confidence that you can almost see brimming from a team. And they look like that team that's on one of those rolls that you get on, a roll that can end in the Super Bowl. The only reason I don't think it will is because I just think that beating Kansas City in their building with this prolific attack, you almost have to play the perfect game. Everything has to go right for it to happen. That's how explosive this team is. I mean, last year, they put up 31 points in a half against New England. Last week, now again, O'Brien made some ridiculous decisions, but still, they put up prolific numbers after the first quarter. Now, Tennessee's a lot better defensive team than Houston was. And they have a guy who's going to move the chains. And let's be honest, what Henry's become is one of the real forces that we've seen in the postseason in years and years. We haven't seen a back dominate like this in a long time because he can do so many things. You saw him throw a touchdown pass last week. He can break plays for 60 and 70 yards. He has that kind of speed. He can go inside. He can go outside. He can move the chains. He can dominate in every way. He can take every play on a drive. There's nothing he can't do. But what's going to have to happen in this game, and Vrabel's a sharp coach. I think you've seen a couple of teams and a couple of players emerge in this postseason. You've seen Henry emerge into a superstar. You've seen Vrabel emerge into a guy now who is a recognized, legitimate coach. His team has been 9-7 the last couple of years. They were on the brink of doing some decent things, and now they have finally broken through with what's gone on here in recent weeks, with the wins that they were able to get against the Pats, and then, of course, shutting down a Raven team. And they shut them down in a way that nobody thought was possible. I mean, the Ravens had been a dominant regular season team, one of the more dominant regular season teams we had seen in years. And they were pretty much shut down, let's be honest. They moved the ball. Yes, they moved a lot of it cosmetically late when the game was one-sided. They did not get in the end zone until the game was very, very late and was already over. So we know that Jackson was not able to do what you have to do, which is score points in these games. Put your team in the end zone. That's how you win. And he's got some work to do in the postseason. And Vrabel's game plan was very, very good. He knows that he can't win this game holding this opponent to the numbers that he's held the last two. He's not going to come close in doing that. So he knows he's going to have to make big plays. So look for them to be much more looking to make big plays off play action down the field. Tannehill can't beat Kansas City with passing numbers under 100 yards. As a matter of fact, I think he's going to have to make 2 or 3 enormous passing plays to win this game because you're going to need points. If you're going to beat Kansas City in this type of game, the score is going to be in the in the high 20s, no matter what. That might be even impossible to keep them in the 20s. But you're going to have to figure that's the bare minimum they're going to get in a game. They're going to get enough, even if you limit their possessions to 8 or 9, which would be tremendous. They're still going to make plays because there's things that they do that nobody else does. And I'll give you some of that and talk about that prolific offense when we come back. So we got a lot more to do. We'll be joined by the fan at 6 on this Football Friday. before Championship Sunday, previewing Championship Sunday on this Football Friday, radio.com. When you look and you think about slowing down this team, now they beat them. The first time they beat them, Mahomes had 446 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. They beat him 35-32. Their running back gets 188 yards. They made big plays. They were able to win the game. They're going to have to be better than that this time. They're going to need turnovers. They're going to need a couple of short fields, and they're going to have to run the ball and run the ball well. Kansas City's been better against the run in recent weeks, but I don't know if they can do that without Jones. I don't think they can stop Henry. But the question is, does Henry make a big run that goes for a touchdown that's negated, but he has good stats, or does he move the chains and keep them pinned and minimize their possessions? To me, the key for Tennessee is 2 things. Number one, can they keep them to 8 or 9 possessions? They can't give them more than 8 or 9 possessions. If they get more than 8 or 9 possessions, you're not going to stop them. Why do you say that? Because they have a talented quarterback who's on the verge of greatness, and their receivers are open 45.6% of the time. That means open in the league means 3 yards or more that they are in space. 45% of the time they are open. They have guys who run faster than everybody else. They have a tight end who's acrobatic. They have weapons and a quarterback who can do it with his legs, with his arms, in a variety of ways, and a vintage play caller who is the most pass-happy play caller in the history of the sport. They are a lethal offense. They have showed that. They put up 51 last week, and they didn't score early. They put up 31 in the second half against the New England defense last year. Keeping this offense under control is a nightmare. It's a difficult thing to do. You are going to have field position where you pin them with your punter, which they have, and you're going to have to slow this game. This will be a harder thing to do than they did in New England or than they did in Baltimore. This will be more difficult. That's how good this offense is right now. This will be that tough a chore. Now, I think when you look at it, they are a very, very live dog for a couple of reasons. The biggest reasons why is I think when you look at their weapons now, Henry, what Tannehill has given them, and with the weapons they have in the passing game, which are highly underrated, they have an ability to be very explosive in their own right. I think they're going to score points. To me, this one, and I will wait until later on to give you predictions. I'll do that on the fan later in the show. But this one, I can see Tennessee playing well and still losing. I think, but this team has a belief right now. And if it can execute the way it is executed and bring that kind of confidence, it has a puncher's chance. The second game, it's about basically letting the quarterback operate. Can they, right now, can Green Bay go to work on what happened the first time they played and spend this past week on operating against that San Francisco pass rush? I think Green Bay on defense will do okay. Not great, but okay against the San Francisco offense. I think the San Francisco offense is underrated. They cannot have the success running the ball that they had against Minnesota. They cannot. If they do, this game will be a rout. That has got to stop, and I think Green Bay should be able to do okay there. Green Bay's got, if it can get them in passing downs, has got some nasty pass rushers of their own right, obviously, who have had sensational years. But they have got to get him operating, he being Rodgers, in a mode where he is not thinking about being under incredible duress on every single play. It can't happen. That cannot happen. He's got weapons. But the key is, can they run the ball enough to keep it honest? Minnesota could not. Minnesota, you could tell right away, as I sat there last week and said to you, hey, the Saturday games last week were really easy to figure out. Could they run the ball or not? If Tennessee could run the ball, they were going to be right there, and they could run it. I said, can Minnesota run the ball? They have to run the ball. I said, Henry's got to get 30 carries. He got his carries and his yardage in what was a route, so he didn't have as many carries as he needed to because the game turned into a route. And I said, Cook has got to get 25 carries. Cook wound up getting 9 carries for 18 yards, and he never had a chance. Not a chance. And they completely dominated that game, holding Minnesota to 147 yards, which is one of the lowest totals since the merger in playoff games. That's how dominant that game was. Now, San Francisco didn't do a whole lot with the offense because they only passed for a meager amount of yardage, which they rushed the ball for 186 yards, and they were dominant in that running game, and that was enough. Garoppolo had a very quiet game. Kittle had a very quiet game. Kittle will not have a quiet game this time. He did not have a quiet game last time against Green Bay. He was 6 for 129, and he is one of the best offensive players and complete players in the league. He is a critical player in this game. The thing about this game, though, if you take it for a minute from a betting standpoint is, and we talked about this earlier in the week in a couple of different places, if you were looking at this from a standpoint of laying 7.5 points against Aaron Rodgers, you realize you must be up more than 15 late, or you could definitely give up a backdoor cover. If Rodgers has the ball down 15 with 3 minutes left, he's going to score a touchdown. They're going to play prevent. They're going to give him a soft field. They're not going to want him to get one play down the field. They're going to give him a soft field and let him dink and dunk his way right to the end zone, and then onside kick with 20 seconds left, and then they lie on the ball and the game's over. Rodgers has been an underdog of 7.5 points or more 3 times, and he's 3-0 against the spread. I think he's lost all the games, but he's 3-0 against the spread. I mean, him getting 7.5 points a lot. That is a lot of points. Not happen very often. Not very often they're underdogs. And when they are underdogs, rarely are they underdog that many points. I mean, that is highly unusual for them. So there you have to worry about that and I think it's why I would not lay points against that kind of quarterback, because you'd have to blow them out in a championship game setting where if you are up in the fourth quarter and you are a young coach and a young coach who has seen some crazy things happen in the postseason, and you have a young quarterback and you are now trying to melt the clock against a prolific Hall of Fame quarterback, you are going to put the ball in the deep freeze. You're going to call in the dogs and say, let's work on that clock and let's get out of here. And I can see that happening. So I think Rodgers and the mentality of the Niners both play against them winning in a blowout fashion. Kansas City doesn't play that way. They play fast and loose. They're going to attack anything that moves. That's just the way they play. If they get up, they're getting up more. If they have a chance to get up more, they're getting up more. That's just the way they are. They're trying to hit home runs. They're trying to score all the time. If Tennessee's in that game, and Tennessee has to play that game from within hailing distance. They cannot get behind early in that game. Because if there's a point where the play action doesn't work, where Kansas City says, we're not buying a fake, give them the ball. Well, their whole game is built on that. Once the play action is out of there, once the run doesn't play anymore, That's it. That's over for them. Then they're not doing anything. And so Kansas City's just going to sit back and say, okay, give them the ball. We're not buying the fake. We're playing pass. Give them the ball. We'll give them 5 yards or 8 yards, and we'll tackle them. And that's how they'll play it when they have a big lead. So Kansas, listen, if you're built like Tennessee, you got to play from in front. And what they did in the game in New England, which won them the game, go back to that for a second. That game hinged in what has always been New England's sweet spot, going into the half, coming out of the half. New England is going in. 3 minutes and change left in the first half. They have a 1st and goal on the 1 to go up 17-7, and they don't get a touchdown. They have to settle for a field goal. So now they're only up 13-7 instead of being up 17-7, which changes everything. And what happens? You remember what happens. Tennessee answers the bell right there with a drive that is all Henry and puts it in the end zone and takes a 14-13 lead into the half. And we all know that lead was still 14-13 when their all-pro punter put the ball on the goal line, and then Tom threw a bobbled pick six that made the game look different than it really was. It was a scoreless second half. I can guarantee you this. Won't be a scoreless second half when Kansas City and Tennessee play this week. Because nobody's shutting out Kansas City for a half. It's just not in the cards. It's just not happening. So that game swung. I really believe, I firmly believe this. If New England had gotten up 17-7, I believe they would have won the game. I think it would have changed the way they played defense in the last couple of minutes. It would have changed the mentality at the end of the first half. It would have changed the way the second half would start. And I think they would have built on that lead, and they would have been gone. And I don't think they would have been in the Super Bowl anyway. I think they would have lost the next week anyway. I think they were getting ready to lose anyway. They didn't have a lot left at the end of the season. They had very little left offensively. Things had really fallen apart. And we know that. So they were not a championship team at that level, which they had proved the week before, but not even be able to beat the Dolphins, which cost them obviously a bye, which changed their whole postseason and changed Kansas City's postseason. Everything is broken right for Kansas City. Now, you always look at the mentality of coaches. In the San Francisco matchup, you have young coaches know each other well. You have young coaches who are ready to put their stamp on a title game. How do they adjust to the way the game was played this year, the 37-8 route? How about what they know about each other and how that plays into everything? So that is intriguing with coaches who are still relatively young and still building something. Obviously, we know more about Shanahan than we do about LaFleur. But these guys know each other very well. They know how they operate. They know what to expect from each other. Conversely, you have Andy Reid, who clearly, of all the teams here, listen, Green Bay wasn't expected to be here this year with a first-year coach, despite the Hall of Fame quarterback. San Francisco was still a year away. They've arrived a year minimum early. Tennessee, heck. I mean, nobody expected this run. And then Kansas City, which had to wait a year to get back to the same exact spot. Last year, a D4 at offsides, as you know. A blatant offsides, but an offsides cost them a chance to go to the Super Bowl, cost them a victory against New England, and they had to wait a year and go through all the offseason and go through training camp and go through a Mahomes injury and go through a Hill injury and go through every step of the ups and downs of this season to get right back now to the same place they were a year ago in Arrowhead on a championship Sunday, 60 minutes from the Super Bowl, with Andy Reid, who is one Super Bowl win away from being remembered as one of the great NFL coaches, because everything else is in place. He's been innovative. He's got an incredibly successful coaching tree. He has had brilliant success in the regular season in two different places. I mean, if you look at his career against Bill Cowher, his career is so much better than Bill Cowher's, except for one thing: Bill Cowher won a Super Bowl. Andy's won 4 divisions more. He's had 5 more seasons of double-digit wins. He's got 50 or 60 more wins. He has had a better career by far. He's won 200 games. He's won more games than any coach in history who hasn't won a title. If you look at the guys who have more wins than Andy on the all-time NFL list, every one of them has won a championship. Whether it's pre-Super Bowl or in the Super Bowl era, every one of them has a title. Andy's been to this game a bunch of times and had his heart broken. He went to the Super Bowl once and lost a 3-point decision. As we all know, is that weird thing that went on with Donovan McNabb, which is still to this day very hard to even understand what exactly went on. I still don't know. Doesn't matter now. He left Philly, and everyone wondered, wow, what's going to happen to Andy Reid? Well, what did he do? He went to Kansas City and has put the Chiefs right back in the picture year after year with one of the most exciting offenses the league has ever seen. Statistically, he's the most pass-happy coach in the history of the league. And he is a proven winner except one thing. Right now, he's more Marty Schottenheimer or more Chuck Knox. And those are two guys you don't want to be, because they were both recognized as superb coaches, but they both had enormous problems in the postseason. Haunted in the postseason. Let's be honest. Let's be brutally honest. Andy Reid needs to win these next 2 games. It's now for him. He's never, ever, ever, ever going to have a better chance. This is it. I really believe, and if you listen to this show or you listen to any of my shows through the years, you know that Andy's been a guy that you've heard on this station 1,000 times with me, and has been a friend for many years, going back to before he even coached the Eagles. And I very much want to be down in Miami in a couple of weeks for the game. I'm taking the boys to the game. Especially got to take Harrison if the Chiefs are there, because he's a big Chief fan. And I want to be there in that building rooting for Andy. Even if Julio's there, I already told him I got to root for the Chiefs if they're there. We'll take Julio if the Niners are there. So we'll have to, just deal with both. And Julio's got enough victory, so he can live through it if he loses the Super Bowl. He won't like it, but he can live through it. But it's now for Andy. He's had a lot of heartbreak in these postseason games. He had more last year. This is it. If it doesn't happen this year, honestly, I'm not going to believe it's ever going to happen. I'm not going to sit here next year at the same date and say, here it is, here's his chance. Last year, I really thought this year would be there. I picked Kansas City to win the Super Bowl over New Orleans this year. I was stunned by what New Orleans did in the postseason. I really was shocked by their performance. Really was. Shocked. I thought they were the best team in the NFC. Was wrong. They weren't. They didn't win the New Orleans game. I mean, they didn't win the San Francisco game. They took the lead in that game, and that game changed everything for them because it made them play that first game. And San Francisco didn't have to play that game because they let Garoppolo and Kittle make a play when they took the lead with seconds remaining in their building, and they couldn't get it done. And the ability that Garoppolo and Kittle showed in getting the ball down the field, and you tacked on a penalty, and then they kicked the field goal and beat them. And that changed everything, as did the Seattle play on the goal line, as we know. But the Saints had a play in the opening week despite winning 13 games, despite winning all their games when Drew Brees didn't play. And Drew Brees, frankly, looked old again this year. He did. I think the clock's running out on him. He's had a great career, but I think it's running out on him. So I thought Kansas City would be back this year. I'm not so sure they'll be back next year if they lose. Now, they're going to have a good team, I understand, but I'm just not going to believe because right now, everything broke right. They got a chance to get a game at home. Then Baltimore loses, and they get a chance to play the AFC title game at home. And if they win this game, they're going to be favored in the Super Bowl. This is the now time for this team and for Andy. Mahomes, we can sit here and say, he's going to have countless opportunities. Hey, Dan Marino. That's all you have to say. Dan Marino played the Niners in that second year, had a brilliant season, 15-1 versus 14-2. Unfortunately, that day he ran into the team that Bill Walsh said was the best Niner team he ever had. Lose that game. Dan left the tux in the bag for the after victory party after the game. Figuring, you know what? I'll get to use that tux a bunch of times. He never got to take the tux out of the bag again. That was Dan Marino. So it can happen to Mahomes very easily. Rodgers has won one. Breeze has won one. Marino never won one. These aren't easy to get. So it's not automatic that you get back there. So when you're there, you have to seize the moment and get there and win it. That's what's in front of Mahomes right now. Get it when you're getting's good. And right now, the getting's good for the Chiefs. Yes, listen, Tennessee's going to go in there, and they're a live team. And I know the thought, Tennessee's going to win or they're going to get blown out. I don't believe that for a second. I don't think it has to be that way. Tennessee can play a very solid game and still get beat by this team because they got the ball last. The question you have to answer for Tennessee is this. They get the ball back, down a point, minute and a half left, one timeout. Can't really use the running game from your own 20-yard line. Can you win with Tannehill in that spot? That's the question you have to answer. Because then, can't be Henry. We'll save predictions for both in the, and we'll do them in the 6 o'clock hour on the Fan, so we'll come back with that. But first, let's welcome in Albert Breer and do some NFL with him. I'll get some thoughts on a couple things going on in the league. Albert, welcome. How are you? Oh, he's not here yet. Well, we're waiting on him. He should be with us in a second. So I thought they were welcoming him in, so we should have him with us in a second here. Now he's here? All right, Albert, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
Thank you. What's your thoughts on the games? What's your first thought?
Well, I think looks tricky for the favorite. And I think the other one is going to be difficult for the underdog. To be honest with you, I outside of Aaron Rodgers is going absolutely nuts and throwing for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns and all the rest of it. I think the Packers are going to have a hard time beating the Niners out there in San Francisco. On the other hand, the Titans, I think, are equipped to pull the upset. They're tough-minded. They've got, the running game to slow the game down and sort of keep Pat Mahomes and that offense on the sideline. They've got good history against the Chiefs. They've gone in there and won, and they've won there in the playoffs. And they've got a coach who I think is very, very well equipped for this stage in Mike Vrabel. And so, I think the Niners Packers on paper probably looks like a closer game, but just because of the dynamics that each of the four teams bring into this playoff round, I think the Titans are actually probably more capable of pulling an upset on Sunday than the Niners, than the Packers are.
The NFL postseason makes stars. That's where regular season's fine, but you make your star. You become a star in the postseason. Vrabel has now emerged as a legitimate coach. He's now no longer just one of the guys. He now has established himself as a coach for the next decade in this league. He's going to be a prominent figure. He's broken out. And let's be honest, Henry has emerged in an amazing way. No one was talking about Henry early in the season. Yeah. Nobody was talking about Henry in the middle of the season. Henry has put together a couple of the best games that any running back's ever had in the NFL playoffs.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about it is you look at the coach, you look at the makeup of the roster, really this is a 4-year plan that the general manager, John Robinson, has executed to near perfection. And outside of their issues at quarterback, this is going to be a team, I think, that's going to be one to be reckoned with no matter what happens on Sunday going forward. And the main reason why, and touched on it there's real identity. What you're looking at when you look at that team. Big offensive line, tough defensive line, big running back. The receivers are big. The defensive backs are tough and they can hit. Just at every level. You look at the Titans, their roster, their makeup, their mentality, and it all fits. And, in that way, Mike Vrabel's a perfect coach for that. He's very, very good, game management type of situations. He knows how to really kind of impose, his team's will on another team. And to me, it's, Mike, I know all those years in New York in the 80s, you witnessed a team that I think was a perfect fit for his coach with Bill Parcells and the Giants. I'm not saying that the Titans are going to become that, but I would say that there's a very, very well thought out, very well defined identity there and who the Tennessee Titans are. And they've got an absolute perfect guy in Mike Vrabel to be pushing the buttons for him.
I agree. And Henry, like we said, has emerged. A couple things around the league, and we'll get back to the games for a second. We're talking about Albert Bria. I don't want to go, I told you so, but I think clearly this week has really, finally people have had enough of Beckham after this week. This week was really damning for him. Yeah. He's getting killed by NFL people. He's getting killed by players. This was not a good week for him.
Yeah, but it doesn't look like Dave Gettleman was so crazy anymore, does it?
Well, I was never against trading him. I didn't like to trade, but I just think enough's enough. How many times is he going to go to the well here? And I think finally the people who have backed him have even started to run away from him a little bit now.
And here's the crazy thing, Mike. How special a night was that for LSU and all of those kids?
Yep.
To be able to dominate the way that they dominated and playing the schedule that they played, just such a special night for that school, for that program. And I don't know. It really rubbed me the wrong way that Odell Beckham went in there and made the whole thing about himself.
About him, and then turned it into a negative.
Right. And it's just, you look at it and it's like, look, I'm a big believer in this. You are who your best players are, right? And so that was always the trouble with, bringing in somebody like T.O., who was a hell of a competitor. But, the team sort of takes on the personality of your best players. And, I don't know if there's evidence that Odell Beckham's a winning player. Mike, you watched him up close for those years. Can you think of one play that he made? I'm not talking about highlights, a clutch play.
Nope.
Where you said in the biggest spot, he came up huge.
No, never. Listen, he had immense talent. He was impossible to cover. and he put up prolific numbers his first couple of years. But you know what? He was never, and he had a terrible game in the playoff game he played in. And frankly, I just think you're seeing it. He's destructive, and he's got to grow up. I mean, I've been saying it for years, and now it does. And now he went, and what did he do? With friends like him, you don't need enemies as programs. With what he did this week, it was just another. I think it finally came back to roost with him this week. And you know what? It just shows you that guys like that just need to straighten out, and he hasn't yet. A couple other things.
And I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but like even at LSU, like look at the talent that was around him there, right? Trey Turner and Lyle Collins on the offensive line, Jeremy Hill at running back, Jarvis Landry on the other side at receiver, Zach Mettenberger at quarterback, and they won. They were 9-3. You know, at college, they were 9-3. I mean, you see it enough, and it's like the guy's never been on a great team, you know. And you wonder, like, eventually if he's this great a player and he can lift people up around him, at some point you have to see it. At some point it can't just be about the highlights and the stats. And he's 27 years old now, so I think you sort of have to come to the conclusion he is what he is.
Anything jump out at you about the way these guys are building their staffs? Whether it's Giants, Cowboys, Kellen Moore staying in Dallas, etc. You know, all the stuff going on with the Giants and the offensive coordinator. What if anything, interests you about how they're building their staffs?
I'm really intrigued by what's happening in Carolina, to be honest with you. With Matt Rule going there, they bring Joe Brady over from LSU. Despite the fact that there's not like a real relationship there between Rule and Brady, they were actually hooked up through some mutual friends. And, so he's taking a swing there. He's bringing his defensive coordinator with him from Baylor. And so, I just think one thing that's sort of interesting about what the Panthers are doing is there's just a lot of innovation coming in, and a lot of different, I guess like a different way of thinking and a different way of kind of seeing football is coming into the Carolina Panthers building. And so I'm really intrigued by what they're doing and putting that staff together. And Mike McCarthy's staff's interesting from the standpoint that they're keeping Kellen Moore in place, and they're saying he's the play caller, and we'll see if that lasts. And then they go with a lot of experience on defense headed by Mike.
And they got Fossil, which was a great hire. That's a great hire.
Yeah,
he's a very good special teams coach.
And so it's funny because I had a discussion with Stephen Jones about this last week, and the point he made to me was like, this is not the time for us to take risks because they got so many guys in that roster that are right in the wheelhouse of their prime, right? Like, so Dak's about to sign a new contract. Zeke just got his contract. A lot of the offensive linemen are paid. They got to make a decision on Amari Cooper. So and the defense is, needed some leadership, but there's some good young talent there. This is very much a win now roster. And that was a big reason why the Joneses decided to hire Mike McCarthy because they felt like they couldn't, bring in a guy who's a projection as an NFL coach. They need somebody where they knew. And I think you see that reflected on the staff, too, where they bring in a guy in Mike Nolan who's run defenses in the NFL before. They keep Kellen Moore in place. I think probably, huge part of that is to create some normalcy for the quarterback. And even, like you said, to bring Bones Fossil over from the Rams, that's a very, very experienced special teams coach. And so you see experience up and down the staff, and you can sort of see, I guess, sense of urgency in Dallas now where it's not just the head coach, it's the assembly of the staff and based on finding a way to win right now in 2020.
How about LaFleur? As you get ready for these games, people have seen Shanahan, they know him. They obviously have seen Vrabel as a player and a coach. They know him. Everybody understands the plight of Andy Reid, which is going to be on display all weekend. This is, kind of now and never for Andy. We understand that. And you're always looking at those storylines. LaFleur is a guy that people don't know a lot about. And here he is in his first year. It's his team has a terrific season. They're here in a title game in their first season. He did not get the attention that a McVay got. But look what he's accomplished in his first year as a coach.
Yeah, and I don't know, Matt, if you know Matt, Matt doesn't have, like, the overpowering presence that a McVay or a Vrabel have, right? Like, where they walk in the room and you know it, right? Like, he's not so much that guy, but he's very sharp. And, like, he's logical about the way that he goes about his business. And so It's basically for the players. You do this, you do what I tell you to do, because I did my homework and I know what I'm talking about, and you're going to find a way to win. And so it's less about swagger, it's less about flash, it's more about like, I'm going to give you something that's going to work. And I think the greatest triumph you see from him is the relationship with Rodgers, and that was a problem for really the last half decade, and there was back and forth between Mike and Aaron, and obviously that ended as it ended. And now you have Matt LaFleur coming in here, who's basically age-wise is a peer of Rodgers, and so getting Rodgers to buy in and getting Rodgers to sort of assimilate himself into the system and then telling him that this system is going to work for you is a major triumph for Matt LaFleur. And that's something too, Mike, this, that resonates through a building. When you get the best player to buy into what you're selling, well, then other guys are going to be lined up to buy in as well.
What did you think about what the Browns did?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I can tell you this, Mike. Johnson Daniels went in there last week, 1 week ago today, and basically set out a vision to them and said, either you're going to blow things up and go with what I'm telling you, which is that you've got to change basically everything you do, or if you think a lot of the stuff that you're doing is right, that's fine, that's cool, it just won't be me. If you think all you need to do is just drop a coach in there, then that's your prerogative. You go ahead and do that. And that's pretty much what they're doing. They're holding on to Paul DePodesta. I think they'll probably wind up hiring Andrew Berry as the general manager. So they're going to run back, the whole analytics model that we saw, the one that didn't really work in 2016 and 17 with a new coach. Now I like Kevin Stefanski. I think Kevin's a good young football coach, and I think he'll help get more out of Baker Mayfield and all of that. I'm a little skeptical that the baseball model that they're going all in on now and going in deeper on than they did 4 years ago. I'm skeptical that's going to work, but I will say this: Jimmy Haslam did act with conviction on this, and we heard him talk about alignment and everything else. I think the question was, were they going to align around the model that they've been sort of intrigued by, or were they going to align around a head coach? And I think the answer we got now, based on the decision that they made, is they're aligning around the model that's been set out for them by the analytics people.
Do you think as this thing comes to a close quickly and everyone looks to the draft, do you think there will be a lot of teams thinking they can reach up and steal Tua, or do you think somebody like Miami will lock him in despite the injury problems at 5?
Yeah, well, the injury thing's going to be significant. Now, I'm personally of the opinion right now, if you had the draft today, I think the draft would start at 3. I think you'd have Joe Burrow, the LSU quarterback, going to Cincinnati at 1.
Yep.
I think you'd have Chase Young, the Ohio State defensive end, going at 2 to Washington.
Yep.
And then Detroit has the 3rd pick, and I think that's really where the draft would sort of start, right? For Tua in particular, I think what the medicals at Indianapolis in a month and a half are going to be so important. I mean, they're basically everything for him, Mike. Because he had 3 surgeries over his last 2 college seasons, really the only 2 college seasons where he was a full-time player, there are very real questions there. And look, I mean, you can say, well, he's young, he'll get past it, but the truth is, and teams know this, quarterbacks over the last decade who've come into the league with significant injury history and gone in the first round almost uniformly have gotten hurt again when they got to the pros. Sam Bradford in 10, Jake Locker in 11, Robert Griffin in 12, Marcus Mariota in 15, Carson Wentz in 16, Deshaun Watson in 17. All of them had serious injury history coming out of college. All of them got hurt again in the pros. And so that's what Tua is battling against now. I can't tell you if he's going to wind up going 3rd or 5th or 20th. I think so much of that's just going to depend on what the individual team doctors say. The tape, and I know you've been talking about it for a while, the tape is really, really good. Really, this boils down to what each team's doctor.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have a close friend who's a big orthopedic surgeon, and he says that injury, I mean, there's going to be a real percentage of him not being able to play with that hip. So there's going to be probably about a 1 in 4 chance that he doesn't get back from this. So you're going to roll the dice with him, at least to some level, with that injury.
And you got to really like the player to take that risk, right? Like you have to really, really like the player.
Yep. I mean, listen, he could be a Hall of Fame player. He's got that kind of he's got a Hall of Fame ability. He's one of the most accurate passes ever to come out of college. There's no question. Yeah. But as you said, which is very fair, guys who are frail in college are frail in the pros, and usually worse.
Right.
And he obviously has been incredibly frail in college. So it's a roll of the dice, and that's why I would think it's probably more a roll that you take if you're Green Bay, New England, or somebody who's got a top quarterback, already, on the roster that's getting older, and you could blow a first-round pick, maybe, but you might also strike gold with your first-round pick.
And you sit him for a year, and I think it makes all the sense in the world if you're one of those teams. You sit him for a year. There's no pressure on him. Like the Chargers, I think, would be an interesting one, right? Like where you say, okay, so no pressure on you at all. Just get healthy. Just get yourself physically where you need to be. You've been basically injured for most of the last 14 months, either injured or coming back from an injury. We need you at 100%. So we're just going to put you on ice for as long as it takes for you to get completely healthy. I think that one makes all the sense in the world. And again, like you said, I mean, he's got a chance to be a really good NFL player. I can tell you, the scouts have gone through there, talked to the Alabama coaches. The comparisons the Alabama coaches have made, and I've heard two of them. One is Drew Brees, and the other is Russell Wilson. So if he's somewhere in that neighborhood,
I think he's a great player if he's healthy. I don't think there's any question. I just don't know if he's going to be healthy. I think it's a real risk. I think it's a definite risk, and one you have to be able to take as an organization. So that's why I don't know if you're Dolphins, you want to break the bank at 5 and take that kind of risk.
And you know this, Mike. I mean, the football people will tell you this. It's not up to us. Right, like it's not up. In a lot of cases, it's not up to the football people. The doctor makes the call.
Yep. And the owner's got to run, and the owner's got to decide whether he wants to roll the dice or not.
Right, and the doctor in a lot of cases, and this will happen. The doctor will say, "All right, well, you can take him in the third round, but you can't take him in the first or second. You can take him in the second round, but you can't take him in the first. A lot of times that's what the equation is, and So I mean. It's going to be fascinating to see what comes of this, because I'd assume he'll get to Indianapolis and they'll have some medical information on him, and then I think I would assume he'd have to go back for the medical recheck in April, and of course all the team is going to be able to bring him in and take a look at him. So to me, he's one of the more fascinating draft prospects that we've had, because he's so high profile in college, played so well. I mean, the way he broke onto the scene in the national title game 2 years ago as a true freshman, there's so much there. And, medically, it's dicey. It's very, very dicey.
No, it is.
Taking him, even if your doctors clear him, you take him, you're still holding your breath.
All right, 20 seconds. Who's in the Super Bowl?
I'm going to take the Niners and the Chiefs. I would not be surprised if the Titans wind up there, though. I'll take that. I think Niners Chiefs is probably the game to get.
All right. Listen, thanks very much. We'll talk to you Super Bowl week, so thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Bria, take a quick break, and we'll come back on The Fan. On this last Football Friday of the season, and you don't count the Super Bowl because that is not a Football Friday. That is not a football weekend. That is anything but if you've ever been to the Super Bowl, especially now with what they basically priced every decent fan out of the vicinity. I mean, you better bring a lot of money. You're going to the Super Bowl. Check the ticket prices out now. They are astronomical, and staying anywhere near a Super Bowl now costs you a king's ransom. So that game has turned into one that is only for people who are very well heeled. I mean, that is what it's become. So the last football weekend for most is this one, although you'll be obviously at your Super Bowl party in 2 weeks. Football Friday as we get ready for the championship games. But before I get there for a second, because I just heard what was playing on The Fan, all the crazy sound bites. And boy, it is, you know what you need now? You need guys to be scraping the mud off the walls. I mean, is anybody safe in baseball right now? Last night, all those stories about, I don't know where they came from, Mike Trout now has been given a pass by baseball because he has this thyroid thing, so he's doing steroids. Tony La Russa's been cheating since the 80s, and you heard those comments. Everyone whining about the Astro. I mean, nobody is safe in baseball right now. There's going to be nobody left by the time they get to spring training. My God, I mean, the mud is 3 feet deep, and it's getting deeper by the minute. If you're the commissioner, you're like, oh, my God, how do we stop? I mean, now you have everybody just coming out of the woodwork, just pounding everybody else. And you know what? Here's the bottom line. People have been looking for edges forever, and they're going to keep looking for edges. Bobby Valentine said the most honest thing the other day. He said, hey, it's only been going on in baseball for 70 years. Yeah, you think guys been trying to steal signs? Yeah, they have. Probably every which way you could possibly do it. And yes, did managers go to the Hall of Fame with steroid players like La Russa? Yes. Did Bud Selig take A-Rod down to protect his own image and clean up his own image? Yes. He did, so that people stop pointing a finger at him, which is what Waxman did in Congress and embarrassed the heck out of him. And that's when the whole steroid thing with baseball turned around. That's when they put some teeth in it when Waxman whacked him in front of the Senate. In front of Congress. I mean, let's be honest. This is protect my image, throw somebody else to the alligators before they eat me. Man, how about what's gone on in the last couple of days? Nobody's safe. And here's the one thing, if you're the Yankees, what about the steroid players, steroid abusers you had on the roster when you're winning these titles? What, that doesn't count? Or you forget that part? Hey, 09, CC, A-Rod was your star. We all know his history. I mean, come on now. How many games were won or home runs hit by Yankees who were steroid guys? They had more steroid guys than anybody else. Manny Ramirez in Boston. Go down the list. I mean, come on now. Nobody gets to throw bricks here. You better be careful when you do. Someone's coming back at you hard now. Stop whining about the titles you didn't win. You didn't win them on the field. Shut up. You don't get to get handed them now after the fact. You didn't win them. You weren't good enough. You didn't win them. Now you want what? You didn't even get to the World Series those years. What are you going to do, go back and play the World Series over? I mean, stop whining about titles not won. No one's going to hand you a title now. You're not going to completely invalidate these titles. There's no way to do that. You can taint them. You can throw enough mud out there, that's for sure, but you're not going to invalidate them completely, and no one's going to hand somebody else a title. So forget that. That just sounds like whining. And let's make sure that you have nobody breaking rules on your team before you do it. And if you're the Yankees, you can't do that. But boy, has it gotten ugly. Going after Tony La Russa now. Guys going after Trout. And listen, they're all telling the truth. Nobody's holier than thou in this game. This is not summer camp and we're handing out trophies and medals for trying. This is the major leagues. You're playing for fortunes, fame, fortune, national celebrity. This is how you feed your family. These guys would do anything to win. And all this stuff. You guys got to decide what's gamesmanship and what's not. If Whitey's loading the ball up in a 61 World Series, is that okay? I mean, come on now. It's gotten crazy. But boy, if you're the commissioner right now, you have opened Pandora's box and you can't get it closed before enough just bile and venom and disease is coming out day after day and slinging mud from coast to coast. Baseball won't have anything left soon. Man, what a nightmare for baseball. And listen, the more somebody slings, somebody else is going to tell a story that they have. And you wait. Because I'm telling you, you wait till they start they start throwing accusations again about steroids. Because I'm telling you something. Guys start talking the way they used to talk. I had a pitcher sit me down one time, and if I told you the things he told me, you know what? You start hearing that stuff, and you're not going to be able to put the fires out. The names that were being mentioned. So you don't want to hear any of that stuff, because it might never stop. I mean, there's plenty of players out there that will talk now if they're out of the game, as you know. I mean, Jack McDowell, man, how about Jack? He did enough damage in one day. Wow. Hey, guys have been looking for an edge in sports forever. I mean, come on now. This is a game played for big money and big reward. They'll take any edge they can get. This is not summer camp. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. But boy, has it gotten ugly. You can't scrape this gunk off the walls, man. It is deep. Oof. Man, think about it. Here it is, Championship Sunday, and they make the NFL look good now. The NFL looks like, you know what? It looks like the clean game all of a sudden. Hey, think about that. The commission, you know what? For once, the NFL is saying, thank God it's not us. For once, it's not us. Here's baseball hanging itself. For once, we're at it in the clear. Now we can just talk about all games on the field. And that's what we will turn our attention to until the next bombshell drops. Let's see who they take. Who's going to be next? Trout, check. La Russa, check. Let's see who's next. Felix, check. We're just warming up. By the time they get to spring training, you might have to fumigate. Whew. All right, 2 good football games. The Titans, who have knocked off the big guys a couple of weeks in a row, now get to knock off the fast guys in Kansas City. And let's just say this. Kansas City showed you they can get out of a hole. Now, I don't think you want to try that at home again, but 24 down, although Bill O'Brien sure did a lot to help him. I mean, still, as dumb a move I've ever seen a coach do in a big game. I'm sorry. If you're defending that one, I don't get it. Come on. You're going to take chances with a 17-point lead. How about getting into the half with a 17-point lead? Man, oh man, that was just, But it led to an incredible display by Kansas City. So these two teams have each met. San Francisco whooped on Green Bay, 37-8. The Titans beat Kansas City, and Kansas City's although Chris Jones is hurt, Kansas City's a better team now. They're healthier on offense. They're better on defense. They were terrible against the run early in the season. They have been good against the run for the most part since Henry hit him for 188 in that game. Tennessee's got a little more to its offense, though, than just Henry. They got some explosiveness in that passing game. Now, they haven't had to go to it here. Tannehill can't beat this team throwing the ball for under 100 yards. That can't work because he can't beat them, with 18 points or 20 points. It's going to need more than that. If you're Vrabel, you got to go in this game and say, hey, if I'm being realistic, I got to score 30 to win the game. I mean, I can't keep them on unless it's some, terrible weather. I can't keep them under 30 points. How are you going to keep them under 30? They got 30.5 last year they got 30.5 24 in the fourth quarter last year against New England in a title game. 31 in the second half. And then last week put on really an outrageous display. Shut out in the first quarter. All they did was score 51 in the last three quarters, including 28 in the second quarter. Now, they got two cheapies, which we know. But still, 51 when they don't score in the first quarter. First team in history to ever, in the playoffs, ever be down 20 and win by 20, which is, when you think about it, almost the thing that should be virtually impossible to do, to be down 20 and then win by 20, which is what they did. And the other game, it's a simple game. It really is. Can Green Bay keep their quarterback upright? He threw for 102 yards and was sacked 5 times in the route last time. Can they give him time to do damage? Give him time to be what he is, which is one of the great, great performers to ever play the position. And that makes him a very dangerous player. We'll come back with some thoughts and some predictions on the games right after this. The Green Bay game is an easy game, I think. San Francisco's the better team, no question. Green Bay has Rodgers. Obviously, when you have a quarterback like that and you're going to give him 7.5 points, the backdoor cover comes in a very big way, where they can be down 14 points. If they're down 14 points, he gets the ball with 3 minutes left, you can basically, it's a 90% chance he's going to get the ball in the end zone. They're not going to care as long as he's taking time doing it, dinking and dunking it in front of the long field. They're back in a 3 deep, and he's dinking and dunking right to the end zone. Then they line up for the onside kick. They lie down on it, and the game ends 7, and you're ticked if you laid 7.5. I mean, you can see that. A guy like Rodgers getting 7.5 is, you almost have to be winning the game by 3 touchdowns to be safe late. I mean, it's that kind of situation. So it's not about 7.5. It's almost like 15 or more. And that's why when you get Rodgers plus those points, you grab him. You grab him because it just never happens. And in his life, the times he's been that kind of underdog, he covers. I mean, that's just the way it is. Even if he doesn't win the game, he covers. So it's just logic. I mean, if you're going to take that from the numbers, you got to take Rodgers in 7.5, because if they play that model out 10 times, he's going to cover 7 or 8 of them. That's all there is to it. That game's not going to be 40-10. And if it is, it is. I mean, but that can happen. But that means their pass rush had to work. And you got to figure, the one thing that Green Bay is going to take from the fact that they were beaten pillar to post by San Francisco the last time, 37-8, can we, A, run the ball enough to keep the San Francisco pass rush honest? Minnesota couldn't. And number 2, can we get the ball out of Aaron's hands quickly? He's one of the most accurate quarterbacks who's ever lived. 3-step drop, some waggles and half roll, some different stuff to move him around a little bit, move the pocket around a little bit, have him doing some different things to change the point that he's going to deliver the ball from, so that you change the pass rush point. Here's an incredible thing. When they've had Bosa and Ford in the lineup, they sack the quarterback 17% of the time on pass plays. The average in the league is 6. They sack the quarterback 17% of the time. That's scary. With Buckner and Armstead and Bosa and Ford, they have incredible pass rush talent. They're going to overrun Green Bay. I think a couple things here. Number one, you saw that Garoppolo looked a little shaky in the game, despite their prowess running the ball last week. Also, I think Green Bay will be better defensively in this game. So I think San Francisco wins. I think Green Bay covers. I think the game's 24-20 San Francisco. I think San Francisco's the better team. I think they'll also be a better opponent in the Super Bowl, despite Rodgers' presence. If we get Rodgers, Mahomes is going to get a crazy shootout, and Mahomes is going to win it because he's got better team. That'll be a wild shootout, but they would lose that game probably, 40-30 kind of thing. San Francisco's a better team. And San Francisco's offense is underrated. And Kittle was not a big factor. He will be a big factor against Green Bay. He had 122 on I think 8 or 9 catch. I think he was 9 catches for 122 last time, and they played. He'll be a factor. He didn't have to be last week. They just ran the ball right down Minnesota's throat. Um, Green Bay's defense is a little sneaky good. They got a very good pass rush. So Garoppolo is more likely to mistake. With Rodgers, if you get him plus 7.5, it's an automatic take. It's an automatic. Even if you lose, it's still an automatic take. You just take it. It just is. Now to the other game. There's a lot going on here. There's no way Kansas City can stop Henry from running the ball. They cannot. The question in the game is there going to be a point in the game where the clock and the score plays against Henry running the ball? Meaning that Kansas City has broken the game open. When that happens and they have to go to the passing game, the game's over. They'll get a 3 and out, then they'll score again, and the game will be completely broken open. Tennessee has to play this game from in front, and he has to get a minimum of 30 carries in the game and get close to 200 yards, and he's capable of doing that. Absolutely. And I can see him getting 200 yards, not on 30 carries. The 30 carries would bother Kansas City much more than the 200 yards. If the 200 yards came on 10 carries, I would give Kansas City a bigger chance because all that would tell me is they're scoring on a quick field where he's making big runs, but that means they're back getting the ball back. If it's about them getting the ball. It's about them running number of plays. Kansas City runs number of plays and keeps the ball. Tennessee needs to keep the ball 38 minutes in this game to win it. It's about that. It's about limiting Kansas City to 8 or 9 possessions. It's not about scoring quickly. Scoring quickly would hurt Tennessee here. They don't want to score quickly. Here's what I worry about with Tennessee. They're a bad team against the pass. They don't have a big-time pass rush. Number 2, they are at the bottom of the league in allowing completions. They're in the bottom of the league in pass defense. He threw for 4 and change against them last time. They're healthier now. And his receivers get open, which means classified open as 3 yards of space, 46% of the plays. They also have 2 receivers who run over 20 miles an hour, which is insane. There's only like 3 guys in the league who do, and they have 2 of them. Hill hasn't even put his stamp on. He had a nightmare last week. I think it's Andy's time. Plus, here's the thing I think. I could see Tennessee getting a little worn down. They won in Week 17 when they had to. They go back on the road against New England and they win. They go back on the road and they play Baltimore. And I think that Baltimore game, despite the fact they won it as easily as they did, as it looked, I think that game takes more out of them than you think. I could see them being a little worn this week. I just think they could be, and it could just kick in the second half after they chase these guys all over the building. To me, this one's a flip of the coin on the cover. I like Kansas City to win. Flip of the coin on the cover. I'm going to say that Kansas City gets the late cover and wins by 10 to 14. I'll go 14. I'll go 42-28 Kansas City, and I'll go Green Bay plus in the second game. I think Kansas City wins. I think San Francisco wins. I think San Francisco wins tight. I would not be surprised. I think it's 50-50 that Rodgers gets a backdoor cover up double digits late San Francisco, and Rodgers gets a backdoor cover that puts the game anywhere from 3 to 7 points. I think that's a distinct, and I mean distinct possibility of it being played that way. If you're asking me which one pulls the upset more readily, I think Green Bay does because of the presence of Rodgers. Rodgers isn't good. He's great. If they can protect him, they can win. He isn't a good player. He is an all-time great player. Mahomes is a great player. He's about to be a great player. He's not a great player yet. Rodgers is a great player. Mahomes is about to be a great player. Henry now has emerged as a great player, but it's still a passing league. And I like everything I've seen from Tennessee, but Tennessee's strengths were much more likely to take down New England and Baltimore than they are to take down the explosiveness of Kansas City. Their weaknesses will be very apparent in this game. Their weaknesses were not weaknesses against a New England team that had no offense and a Baltimore team that was overrated because it was one dimensional. I know Jackson threw the ball for a lot of yardage late. He still couldn't throw the ball outside the numbers. Mahomes can throw the ball every which way but loose. There's no ball he can't throw. There's no pass play he can't make. There's no way he can't put the ball on a dime. That's where he and Jackson are different. Jackson can run it. He can run like the wind. We understand that. But he's still an evolving thrower who wants to throw off play action and throw in the middle of the field. That's not the case with Mahomes, and they are not a good pass defense, Tennessee. That is their weakness, and they're going against a prolific passing attack. I think it's Kansas City, San Francisco in the Super Bowl as far as the 7.5s go. And don't let anybody give you sevens because there's no sevens here, folks. So when someone tells you, oh, I'm laying 7, not laying 7. This games are 7.5. So if you're laying with the Chiefs, you're laying 7.5. And that makes a big difference. So the hook makes a big difference when it's 7.5. 7 to 7.5 is a big difference. So these games are both 7.5. You want to hold out to Sunday and see if they come down to 7. I don't think they will. I think they're more likely to go the other way and go to 8s and then go to. I think Kansas City will go to 8. I don't know if the other game will go to 7 because of Rodgers. It might go to 7 because of Rodgers because he's a lethal threat with that number. So give me Kansas City minus the 7.5 and San Francisco. And Green Bay plus the 7.5. Although I think Kansas City and San Francisco will be in the Super Bowl. I think it's Andy's time and Mahomes' time, and I think it will be a Kansas City, San Francisco Super Bowl. But I think it'll be close in San Francisco, and Kansas City will stretch it out late. And Henry will have another big game, but Kansas City will go on to win it by 2 touchdowns, and then it'll be 2 weeks of can Andy win the last one, and hopefully he can. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. We will see you on the holiday on Monday. We'll be working. So we will see you then. Enjoy your weekend. I think we got a little snow coming tomorrow for the first time. I don't think it's snow blower weather, but it sounds like we got a little snow coming tomorrow. So drive safely. Enjoy your last football Sunday of the year. Super Sunday doesn't count. Should be some fun and some good games.